To make the argument that I believe that modern consumer technology does its part in further marginalizing the elderly in our society. First things first, it's not the fault of technology per se. Computers, iPads, desktop machines, laptops, smartphones, they don't care about the user. They're just there to be used. They don't discriminate. Technology is not a young or old person's game, and yet it's fair to say that the people who are more likely to be less tech savvy will be of an older vintage. When you look at people in my generation, I suppose considered the MTV generation, studies have shown the faster you consume information, the faster your brain can consume information. You just sort of get wired that way. I actually do recall growing up without a computer in the house. I recall growing up before mobile phones, and I remember seeing somebody use, I think it was a teacher using a mobile phone in our school, in primary school. I must have been about 10 or something, and you know, people laughing. You kind of go, look at that idiot on the phone, he's talking to his hand, and now we take it for granted. Even though I came from that time, I'm still very lucky that I came from the time I did, because I was young enough when we had a computer in the house. I was 13, 14 when we finally got a PC, and it came to me very quickly. It's true that the developmental years are very important. It's an amazing thing how your mind gets wired to just then have this understanding, to intuitively understand how future technologies work.
Sociological imagination, the intersection of history and biography, and it's the capacity to understand and acknowledge the relationships between individual biography and history to produce an experience. Adjusting to new technologies can help close the generational gap. The younger generation is lucky we were introduced to technologies at a young age and learned with them as they grew. The older generation is forced to adapt, and sometimes they'd rather just choose not to. This is what makes the gap bigger.
What's worrying is that our society is kind of moving to technologically marginalize people like them and older. The worry is what happens to these people. For example, I've seen the government introduce lots of different services and utilities and different things, and paying taxes and paying this, that, and the other, whatever it is, and now it's all online. And there's lots of people who aren't online, and they're having to get their children to do it for them, or whatever it is, and it's totally unfair, and I just don't see that it's right. These people have worked their entire lives, they've paid their dues, they've paid their taxes, and then in their retirement, now suddenly there's something that has come along that's going to make their lives difficult.
The elderly feel punished for not always being on top of the new technologies from today. We aren't in an environment where everyone has fully adapted and had the intuitive learning on these technologies from the beginning to eliminate the old ways of doing things. The government, for putting things solely on technology instead of the paper ways, such as paying taxes as referenced in the video, is a way to marginalize the elderly and make them actually feel further away from the younger generation. Technology will always move on. Will you move with it?